This reflection and the quotations used draws on the work of Jewish scholar Amy Jill Levine of Vanderbilt University's Divinity School. Working with parables. Parables, though they have been allegorized, moralized, and many times tamed, are far from easy reads or bedtime stories told to children. It is, however, important to note that Jesus appears many times to have had a mixed audience, which would have included children, so he could easily reach out to them and use them as illustrative points. Jews of antiquity knew that parables and the teller of parables were there to prompt them into seeing the world in a different way. Parables are a provocative Jewish genre, which Jesus employed with great skill. They are designed to surprise, challenge, and shake us up, not stories to lull us back into complacency or to make us feel smug, self-righteous, or overly comfortable. Instead, they are meant to make us sit up, meant to help us find our integrity or spiritual backbone again, meant to help us find our most authentic voice and response. This Sunday's Gospel provides an explanation for the parable, but mainly, parables are open narratives inviting us to engage with, imagine, and ask questions to journey us further along. For example, is God's kingdom, God's justice really like that? Are we really meant to treat strangers in this way? What does it mean to be neighborly? With what kind of ears do I listen? You could even say that parables aid us in working out our own salvation, to use St. Paul's phrasing. But although they are open-ended narratives with a surplus of meaning, parables are historically specific. And the more we know about the original context, the richer our understanding becomes. Working with parables. Firstly, see the parable as an invitation and privilege to sit closely at the feet of Jesus, like his initial disciples did. Secondly, to ask a few significant questions of him, to engage with Jesus as his first hearers would have. This conversation is internal and can be as imaginative as your heart allows. In this conversation with Jesus and with your own conscience, bring in the facts of the matter as well, that is to say, first century Palestinian context, and let it engage with your own personal and political one. Thirdly, don't try and strangle a meaning out of the parable. Technically, allegories are stories with hidden meanings. Parables are a different genre. Fourthly, recognize with humility that this story is set in a cultural context far different to your own. Get to know that context. Google is not the only point of reference here. Clergy are too. Or they could refer you to some stunning, insightful, current scholarship and literature. The more you know about the original context, the richer your understanding of the parable will be. It also helps us from panel beating or bruising the parable until it is something else. Today's parable, for example, what was it like to sow seed in first century Palestine? What was food security like? Did the sower own the land she was working on? Was she generous with the seeds or careless so it spilt everywhere? Was she tender towards creatures, the overlooked towards birds, and so acted recklessly, deliberately? Who prepared the soil for sowing? And suddenly, by engaging with the parable, fresh life and insights are gained. Fifthly, let the parable help you formulate a few significant personal questions that will help you on your own journey. perhaps be the beginning of helping you unlock some of the mysteries, concerns, heartaches, or uncertainties you are facing in your life right now. We turn to the parable itself, minus its interpretation, to conclude. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the lake. This opening line alone invites so much reflection and imagination. The Sea of Galilee, the lake, I believe, must have spoken to Jesus' heart and soul many times. He returns to it often. Whose house was it? Tradition says it belonged to Peter, and that Jesus lodged there with that family. Peter had a wife, a mother-in-law, and I suspect children. What kind of relationship did Jesus have with them? And on that day, did one of Peter's children join Jesus in the boat? In the Gospels, he seems to have a penchant for children. Rabbis taught sitting down, and so you know a teaching will follow almost always whenever Jesus sits down in the Gospels. Love that he taught them many things that day using parables. In this Gospel, we are only privy to one of the many things. Such a great crowd gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, listen, listen. A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But you know what? When the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100, some 60, some 30. Let anyone with ears listen. Listen. May you give yourself the grace, and perhaps even the guts, to work with this parable and others in the Gospels, to sit at Jesus' feet, to engage with and to listen to him.